evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the City Council for Monday, January the 12th. If you will all stand, please, and join Councilman Miller in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in saluting the great flag of our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Deaton.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sloan.
Here.
Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Masalavet.
Here.
Councilmember Verapapa.
Here.
By motion of the City Council, this is the time to notify the public of any changes to the agenda and or rearrange the order of the agenda. Do we have any tonight?
I would like to pull a couple of items. Is this the appropriate?
Yes.
I'd like to pull item F and item I.
Could you tell me that's F as in Frank?
Yes.
And?
I.
Okay.
You can't pull I, I'm going to pull I.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
We'll both do it.
I'd like to pull item K.
Okay. Okay, anything else?
Mayor, if I could?
Yes.
I'd like to note for the council that there are revised attachments, both of which are before you on the dais with respect to consent calendar item F on the boards, commissions, and committees, as well as consent calendar item G on the representatives to the intergovernmental agencies, and that's all I have.
Can we know what the changes are so that we don't pull the item? Or?
It's already been pulled.
Oh, okay.
All right, Jill, do you want to say what the changes were?
Yes, on consent calendar item F, which has been pulled and will be discussed. When we're presenting that item, I'll go through that one. On consent calendar item G, there was a change. The change on that one was on the Seal Beach Audit Committee. The new representative on that will stay the same, actually, as Ellery Deaton and the alternate David Sloan, both of which were the appointees for last year. So.
Okay, so with that, we can discuss the other changes when we get to the item. So with that, we have no presentations or recognitions tonight, so we'll move right into oral communications. If you would like to speak to the City Council tonight, would you come forward, give your name for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Raul Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the Cypress College Foundation, and I'm here to talk about our Cypress College 40th Anniversary Americana Awards on February 28th, 2015. We're delighted with the partnership we've had with Seal Beach for many, many years. I know that Seal Beach students, as you do, attend Los Alamitos High School, which is one of our top 10 feeder schools. About 500 students from Los Al attend Cypress College. Proceeds from our event, our Americana Awards, it's the signature event of Cypress College, about 600 folks in attendance each year, business and civic leaders from Orange County. And the proceeds make the work that we do on behalf of students possible. Last year we awarded nearly $300,000 in student scholarships. We built our assets to nearly $3 million, which is important in the short run. Sometimes that doesn't seem as exciting, but what it does is allow us in the future, 10 years and 20 years and 30 years from now, that we'll be able to assist students as we are and even more effectively than today. We provide faculty grants, emergency loans and grants, student book loans and grants, we're there to support the work of the college, which is the education of students, naturally. As I mentioned, the event is February the 28th at the Disneyland Hotel. Our 2015 Seal Beach Citizen of the Year, who is with us tonight, Dee Carey. Would you stand, Dee?
Thank you, Raul. I just want to say thank you to the committee that selected me for this. It's quite an honor. I'm proud to represent the city of Seal Beach at this event, and I hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dee. We have with us tonight several members of our Seal Beach City Committee that made the selection of Dee Carey this year. I'd like to ask them to stand up. Scott Newton is the chair. Bill Ayers, Barbara Barton, Seth Eaker, Chuck Feenstra, Mayor Deaton is on the committee, and other members that are not with us tonight, last time I looked, were Tom Blackman, Jim Klasanen, and Deb Macon. Thank you for a great committee. Did I miss? Oh, like I said. Sorry, Deb. In addition to our Citizens of the Year, we're going to be recognizing a Woman of the Year, where it's easy to say, oh, we're really excited. We are excited to be honoring Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchins as our Woman of the Year, clearly one of the most highly respected and influential folks in Orange County. Our Distinguished Business of the Year is Union Bank. We've been blessed with a lot of supporters over the years. Over the last 5 or 6 years, none more generous than Union Bank. The city, what we're asking the cities to do, we're asking you to, again, sponsor a table for the event. We have founders table and benefactor tables, $3,500 or $2,500. As I say, we don't take your support for granted. We appreciate your participation in the past. Last several years, we have had city display boards that kind of were brag boards telling the different cities' stories and highlights. We will not have those this year, but rather we are providing and giving each city 2 full-page ads across from one another in the program, 2 full-page ads, and we'd like you to put photos of your choice depicting the city, kind of a then and now. I mentioned that this is our 40th anniversary Americana Awards. The event began in 1976 as part of the country's bicentennial. And so we're asking that cities use one of the ads to summarize a then as close to 1976 as possible. And then a now, obviously, depicting the many things that are happening today. Again, we're inviting the city baskets. City councils have been putting together some wonderful baskets that we use in our silent auction and in our live auction. Lunch with various council members or the mayor, other activities, ride-alongs. So we are requesting that. We're requesting, again, a mayor's package. Those have constituted a really nice live auction item, and they're kind of fun as well. The event is important because it's our signature event. It's our major fundraiser of the year, and we're recognizing folks that deserve to be recognized. But having fun is also something you can count on. So glad to extend that invitation again. You should have received invitations and letters from our local government affairs chair, Dave Schauber, but I will leave copies of both to make sure that you have them. So I don't know if you have any questions. If you do, I'd be happy to answer them, but otherwise I'm delighted to be here again.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Deaton, council members, and city staff. My name is Vince Bodiford. I'm the president of the Seal Beach Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to deliver a greeting of Happy New Year to the city, and also a very big thank you for the collaboration and the partnership that this Chamber of Commerce and this city enjoys, particularly as we move forward into our 2015 centennial celebration. And I'm delighted to tell you tonight that at this weekend's Chamber Leadership Retreat, the Chamber of Commerce unanimously decided to become a silver sponsor of the centennial. In fact, I signed the check today. So the Chamber of Commerce is stepping up in a big way to help advance and move forward and promote the cause of our centennial celebration. So I'm very happy to tell you that. And also, just congratulations to Dee Carey, also a Chamber member on the Americana Awards, and we've also decided to become a benefactor sponsor of that event this year. So that's very important to the Chamber and to the city, and we recognize that. The Chamber of Commerce, with regard to the centennial, our commitment to the city and to the residents and to our Chamber members is to be engaged and supportive and very much engaged in the process of promoting these very important events for the centennial. We also seek to be a resource for the Centennial Committee and the city, as we also have a great deal of history to contribute to those events. We intend this year, in 2015, to tie in every event that the Chamber of Commerce produces on behalf of the city, and those include the car show, the health fair. All the events that you see will be at least in some way tied into the history and the celebration of that for the city. So that is definitely part of what we're going to be doing. So thank you for your support of the Chamber of Commerce, and again, Happy New Year. What I'd like to do now is I'm just going to take off my name tag as president of the Chamber, because you all also know that I'm the publisher of The Sun, your favorite local newspaper. And today we're celebrating some very good news I'd like to share with the council, and that's the appointment of our new editor, and her name is Dixie Redfern, and she's with us tonight. So Dixie, if you could please stand. Dixie comes to The Sun with a wealth of knowledge and experience in newspapering. She's also a resident of Old Town. She was retired from a many-year career in this business, and we're delighted to have her on the team. You'll see more of Dixie around town. So thank you, Dixie, for being on board. And, with that, I will, if there are any questions. Wonderful.
Thank you.
I love that. Have a great night.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Welcome to new council members. My name is Barbara Barton. I'm in Old Town. Yesterday, I went to a memorial service, and it was at the Methodist Church. And as I was sitting there, I was looking around and thinking, what a beautiful building this is, a small, neat church. And then I thought, St. Anne's is also beautiful. Our Bay Theater, to me, is beautiful. I think that we need to think about plans in the future to see what we could do to restore these things. I know it'll cost a lot of money, everything does. But if we could maybe put it on future agenda and consider restoring and holding on to these treasures we have. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council, City staff, and the public. Seth Eaker, resident of Old Town, talking on a few items. You're looking into the future. The Run Seal Beach logo coming up on March 21st. Registration is available online now. We're very excited about it. We already have hundreds of runners signed up. We're also still have availability for sponsorship. All that information can be found online at runsealbeach.com. And again, I want to thank the city, staff and departments, and the council for their continuing support of Run Seal Beach. It's a fantastic community event, and we hope to give even more back to our community as we do every year. Number two, congratulations to Chief Joe, even though he's not here, in absentia, for the very fun polar plunge that we did on New Year's Day. Here with about, 60 to 80 plungers and some other people, and it was all to benefit LAIF in our school district. It went really well, and big thanks to Chief Joe for kicking us off, and for all of the candidates for the King and Queen of Hearts. Also, as the former, now the past Citizen of the Year, I too want to congratulate Dee Carey, a tremendous asset to our city, a tireless advocate of animals and really the shelter, and someone who has worked very, very hard and is deserving of the award from the Americana Committee. In terms of centennial celebrations from marketing, lots to kind of update on. Very quickly, website is in process and should be going live relatively shortly. We also have some events that, thanks to city partnership with the Recreation Department, and thank you very much to Tim and Dana, who I worked with today with Mark, we already have opened up on the Rec Guide, where you normally sign on to log in for classes, the May 4th golf tournament, the Happy 100th golf tournament, and also the Happy 100th tennis event, which is on September 20th. So nothing like lots of pre-planning, so we're getting that information out there, and it's coming along really well. Marketing also is looking at doing some other fun things, a banner program, and also a Centennial Corner, hopefully in our local paper. That we'll be looking to have some fun facts and some history and some stories and some information kind of on an ongoing basis for this year's centennial. So that concludes my report, and thank you all very much. Looking forward to a great new year.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Robert Goldberg. Mayor, I'd like to reserve my 5 minutes, if I could, until after the presentation on the sewer and water audit, if I may.
Robert, I'd like to ask you to take it now, please. What has happened is you sent in 3 pages to the staff.
Some questions.
They spent a lot of time on them, so I'm sure that your questions will be answered in the staff report. If they are not, I personally will set time aside, and we can go and sit down with the city manager and the finance director. But I think, in fairness to time and to the effort that's been put in to answering all of the questions, that we should do that now.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to do then is just to make a couple points. The audit report, which you all will be discussing shortly, has to do with the shifting the salaries from the general fund to the sewer and water funds. And it covered 30 employees, and there's 2 groupings of employees that I'd like to talk about. The first is the Director of Finance, the Finance Manager, and the City Manager, and Assistant City Manager. The report recommends that 30% of their salaries be shifted to the water and sewer funds, and this is based on what's called the net position of the general fund versus the sewer and water funds. And net position includes money in the bank, but it also includes infrastructure like buildings and pipes under the ground. It includes equipment, etc. And I just don't think that measurement, that considering the replacement value of buildings or the replacement value of pipes, has anything to do with the amount of work that these 4 employees may put into the water and sewer fund. I don't see the connection there. Many of these, if the concept is we want to make it proportional to some measurement of money, what I would recommend is that you use either relative revenues of the sewer and water fund versus the general fund, or expenditures, either one. These are both direct measurements of activity that means something. Certainly with the finance people, with the Director of Finance and the Finance Manager, that's what they do. They're watching money coming in and money going out. As I said, the report right now recommends that 30% of their salaries be apportioned to the sewer and water funds. That's based on, this net position. But if you actually use, say, relative revenue versus the general fund, the water and sewer fund is only about 18% of the revenue. If you used expenditures, it'd be about 16%. So I think rather than go 30% on these 4 positions, I would say someplace in the high teens would be more realistic. The other 2 groupings I'd like to talk about is the Director of Public Works and the City Engineer. The consultant recommends that 55% of their salaries be allocated to the water and sewer funds, and this is based on some numbers for, figures for the water projects and sewer projects that the consultant was given. But in the comments that you all have received, I couldn't jibe those numbers with what's in the budget. The actual numbers in the budget rather represent about 55% of all the projects being water and sewer projects. The numbers in the budget would be down in the low 40s. So if you're going to use the relative cost of water projects and sewer projects to determine how much money the sewer and water fund should pay for these positions, then it really should be not 55%, but down in the low 40s.
1 minute.
Thank you. You can also, instead of looking at what's budgeted, the report talks about expenditures, and with these projects, with sewer and water projects, what's budgeted and what's spent often is not the same thing because of the difficulty in completing these underground projects. And there's a table I sent to you that actually looked at the value of projects completed over the last 3 years, water and sewer versus general fund, and the water and sewer projects completed were again in the low 40s. So I would argue that the Director of Public Works and City Engineer, the amount charged to the water and sewer fund should be in the low 40s, not the 55% range recommended by the consultant. Thank you.
Joyce Parquet, Old Town Seal Beach. Happy New Year and congratulations to the new City Council. At the last meeting that I attended here before the New Year or after? Before the New Year, Mayor Deaton, you were talking about how good government worked based upon the dirt that came from Newport Beach that Sean was able to get for the city.
Are you referring to sand?
Dirt. It's not the same color as the sand out there now. It's not the same color.
We're talking about the same project.
Yes, we're talking about the berm that should have gone up.
I'm with you now. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Good government would have had the berm put up before the storm came in. Everybody knew it was coming. They knew in Long Beach they were putting it up. Then in Surfside. So the good government would have had the berm up. Good government would have had our lobbyists, because we pay taxes to the federal government, the next time to put us on the list to get real sand from the ocean. Just like the last time that Sunset Beach had the sand, Surfside got it and we had to pay $1 million. A good government, and they did that in the 70s and 80s, because I was here when El Nino happened. A good government would have had the lobbyists tell our representative at the federal government that we want the grant. The grant money is the money we send to the IRS. That's good government. Not waiting until all the people in Seal Way were down there trying to, and the fire department down there trying to get the water off of Seal Way, and them trying to get the water out from underneath their houses. That's good government. The other thing is the transparency in the city government. A couple months ago, I looked on transparentcalifornia.gov. That's where you are required to put all of the employees' salaries and benefits. So I went back last night and looked, and now, at that time, you only had 2011 and 2012. So I went back last night and looked, transparencycalifornia.com. Anybody can go there, taxpayers, and look and see what the salaries are, because the California Supreme Court said that you are required to put that up. It's taxpayers' money, and you're required to put it up. So now we're in 2015. When are we going to get 2014 up? When you got to get 2014 up so that the taxpayers in the city can go on transparentcalifornia.gov and you will see where the money's going in the city of Seal Beach. The next thing on my list is ethics in city government. At Attorney Flowers, I've gone to some of his ethic classes. I missed the last one, but I'll never forget. In his ethic class, the thing he talked about for city government was transparency. Transparency in city government when you're making these decisions. So why did you hide the audit for the water department? It was done in August. Why did you hide it until now?
1 minute.
1 minute. Why wasn't it put forward when I had requested it twice before the election? Ethics, transparency in government. When we come down here, we want to know what you're doing. We don't want to know what you're doing in August when it's already January. So let's see, well, next meeting, we're getting down to the city manager. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I close the oral communications, and I would like to move on to the city attorney report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Only on one item to report on to the council. The mayor has requested that I work with the city manager to prepare a report back to the council regarding options for appointing a permanent city clerk now that the election is passed and the appointing power is with the council. So I will be in the future bringing back that report to the council for your consideration and advice. And just to be clear, there were some comments at the last council meeting to the effect that the city council was planning to meet in closed session to discuss the matter. No such closed session has ever been scheduled. And just to assure the public and the council, any decision to transfer the appointing authority to the city manager, which is permissible under state law, would also have to be done by ordinance, which can only be done in open session. So there will be no closed session approval of that appointing authority transfer. It would have to be done through an ordinance, which requires first reading, second reading, as any other sort of ordinance. So just to kind of put that question to rest, there will be a public action, if any, if the council decides to do anything, at a later date.
City manager?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I have one item tonight. Staff's delighted to bring to you an update on Swim Seal Beach, as we're calling it, which is the new aquatic center project for Seal Beach. And so what I'd like to do tonight is ask Jim Basham, our Community Development Director, just to give the council and community an update on where we're at and what to look forward to. Jim?
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As the City Manager mentioned, Swim Seal Beach is up and running, effective today. We did look at the website, and we have 125 residents that's already been on the website, which is awesome, just outstanding that we have so many folks that are eager to participate, provide ideas and what they believe should be the goals of the community pool and where it should go. So we look forward to it. This is our first starting date, and it's already so popular. So stay tuned, and we'll provide you with updates as they forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Okay, good. Council comments? Councilman Miller?
Yeah, based on what the city attorney said, I would like to see a public agenda item on how to proceed on the appointment of the city clerk, that is by appointment of the city council or city manager. So I would like to have an agenda item on that within the next two council meetings, which is a month to prepare.
I think that's pretty much what he just said. Is that?
I just want to lock in that we'll do it within a month.
I don't, is a month all right? That would be fine. Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Sandra Massa-Lavitt.
That sounds funny. I have nothing to add at this point.
Nothing to add.
Nothing. Okay. With that, then, we will move on to the council items. And we will go directly to the independent accountant's report on applying agreed-upon procedures for compliance with employee payroll allocation percentages. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. What I'd like to do is turn this item over to Vicki Beatley, our Director of Finance and our City Treasurer, and she will introduce Debbie Harper, who's with our auditor with Lansall and Lungard, who worked on this independent auditor's report on behalf of the city. Vicki?
Thank you, City Manager Ingram, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight we have before you an item of receive and file for what is in the industry known as an AUP. It's an agreed-upon procedure. And just a little bit of background, in previous budgets, the city actually had allocation of certain positions in the budget, but it was not easily readable. The user would have to pull up many different pages in the budget, for example, to look where the city manager was allocated, because the city manager's time would show up in the general fund, in the water fund, in the police department, in the sewer fund, in any number of pages. So you'd have to actually have a number of pages. So one of the things that the city manager tasked me with is, when I started, was to put this information in some kind of a format that's easily accessible and easily readable. And so beginning with the 13-14 budget, we actually added the position allocation plan, a very user-friendly, easily readable document in one place where anybody can take a look at any position and see how those positions are allocated. So with that, then, each time that we prepared the budget, the 14-15 budget was the second budget that my team and I were involved with since I've been here. And we've made some adjustments to certain positions through evaluation and through different kinds of looking at how positions were allocated or not allocated, for that matter. So those changes were made, and then discussions were ensuing about how or why some of the positions were being allocated to the water and sewer fund. As a result of the communications, the audit committee actually, who meets with the internal audit, with the external audit firm, actually, on their own, without staff present, asked for recommendations from the audit firm about some additional work that the audit firm may do on behalf of the city. Several items were proposed, and one of those items was taking a look at affirming the payroll allocations that the city was currently using. And given the conversation, the audit committee actually directed the city manager to go ahead and engage Lansall Lungard to perform the agreed-upon procedure. Ms. Harper will go ahead and explain more in detail. She'll give you a brief presentation. But one of the things that I also, before I formally introduce her, wanted to let you know, one of the positions that was looking to the 14-15 budget to change an allocation was the Emergency Operations Center corporal. And because I was aware that the staff, that the work was going to be done by Lansall Lungard, the proposed changes in the cost allocation plan, position allocation plan for that position were not made with the beginning of the 14-15 budget. So there was no change to the EOC corporal. With that, I would like to introduce Debbie Harper, who's a partner with Lansall Lungard. She is the one who oversaw the agreed-upon procedures audit. As I mentioned, she'll make a brief presentation and answer council questions, and I am also happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Before we get started, may I just clarify something?
Yes.
Just so that we are all on the same page, what happened was we were getting a lot of criticism for the way that certain positions were being allocated from water and sewer. When the audit committee met and we went over, one of the main things they asked, because it's completely separate from the city and there are no city employees in there, is there anything that concerns you? And I said, well, I keep hearing that we shouldn't be paying our employees out of water and sewer, so I would think that an audit should be thought about for this. So they took that to the city manager. The city manager hired the consulting firm to do that audit, and this is the end result. And can you tell me, when was that audit finished?
We finished it in August.
You did finish it in August, because I didn't hear about it being finished until January. So I want to just...
Well, once we complete it, you do need to go back and forth and review it, and we had to clarify some questions, like the city staff. Once we start reviewing it, then they had a lot of questions, so we go back and forth. But our actual field work was done in August.
So your field work was done in August, but the audit was not completed until after everyone went back and forth and polished it up.
Yes.
So the field work was done, not the audit.
Right.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. So my understanding was that we were concerned about whether or not we should be paying employees out of the water and sewer. And so now could you go ahead and tell us what your findings were?
Yes. Okay, just to give a brief explanation of our procedures, we looked at a variety of procedures. And we didn't specifically go to the payroll allocation. We looked at the actual allocation. So we actually scrubbed the payroll and did an analysis of what employees are actually being allocated across the city. And we took the majority of those employees that were material. Because it's an agreed-upon procedure, it's a limited scope. So we didn't look at the entire city. We didn't look at every payroll. We didn't look at every paycheck and trace each one in. That would be hundreds of hours, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. So what we do is we just take a sample to look at the overall methodology and say, should we make some changes? Should we make some recommendations? So that's what we did.
So who selected the personnel that were examined?
We did.
And did you do that with input from the city? Did the city help you make that decision?
No, we just pulled the payroll from the city. They gave us the payroll allocation, and we said, these are the procedures, these are the employees that we were attempting to select. These make up the majority of the allocation. If you have any changes, let us know. But there was no given the amount of employees that we were going to test. That was just based on us and based on what was material to the city, because that's what you really wanted to look at. It doesn't mean that we're not going to look at all the city employees and every allocation. Like I said, it was just looking at the methodology and getting a sample to see if the methodology was appropriate and if there needs to be some adjustments to it.
I just want to be sure that there was no bias in which employees you chose to examine.
No, we just did a selection, judgmental selection, based on our experience.
As a third party?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so when we did that allocation, or that sample, we took the sample, and then we actually looked at the actual allocation versus payroll documents. So payroll documents have allocation percentages on personal action forms. We compared those. That was just one test. Is it in compliance with the city records? And then we took other tests and saying, okay, what support documentation do you have for these types of allocations? And that's where you get more of the detail, where we actually looked at the documentation and saying, you're not documenting, which nobody does. Cities do not usually do timesheets and document the hours. So you need to come up with some sort of system that's appropriate for every employee on how you're going to allocate that time. And everyone's a little bit different. Like city managers and finance directors, they manage the entire city. They look at the entire city as a whole. Their job moves from all over the place. That's why we recommended the net position. Revenues and expenditures fluctuate on projects, and this is something that needs to be sustained and just reevaluated and looked back on every other year or so. So you look back on, you need something that's going to be consistent. So net position is important because the larger the net position in those funds, the larger the activity. Infrastructure and capital assets is actually extremely important to the city. It takes a lot of documentation and a lot of time to track all of those fixed assets, to account for the estimated life, to make sure that they're being depreciated in a timely manner. Capital projects, that takes a lot of time as well. So those kinds of items are very important to the city and to the finance director, anybody in finance. They look at all those things. They do fluctuate, although fixed assets is a large part of net position. The change in net position fluctuates based on revenues and expenditures. So that's why you take net position, because the increases in expenditures and the increases of revenues will actually be accounted for in net position. So it's a good spot to get both of those items in there. As far as public works, what we did with the capital projects, because I know that was a question out there, the capital improvement projects is really difficult to tie to the budget. You won't be able to do that. Capital projects fluctuate across fiscal years. So you can't tie it to each fiscal budget. That's why we took the capital improvement project it was a book, I think that's what it was called, Capital Improvement Project, and it actually identified in detail every single project. So that is actually what the Public Works uses to look at their time. They were showing how each project, based on the volume or the amount of the project, that actually increased their time and their need to look at those projects, to assess them, to monitor them. They can fluctuate. They might not be total to the actual, but I hope if there was a large variance, then that's a separate issue in itself on the budgeting. But usually you might have change orders and things for the actual projects to where over time you're going to be very close to your budget. So that's why we kind of use the the capital improvement book for that. As far as our overall analysis, there was other things that we looked at. You had a cost allocation plan that was done a few years ago. I think it was in 2011. And we also looked at that to see if the city was actually doing the allocation in accordance with those. And we saw some areas that maybe could have been changed in the cost allocation plan, so that was another recommendation, to maybe update the cost allocation plan, which is like a formal detail, and it looks at overhead, it looks at square footage, it actually counts projects. It's a more detailed if you really want to do a cost allocation plan across the city, because there's other compliance requirements when you do payroll allocation. So we talked about that as well. And then we just talked about historical overhead charges that were there. We reevaluated those and recommended updates to those. So when you actually looked at the percentage changes as far as what you were allocating, and this is only the 30 items that we sampled. When you looked at that, the general fund was actually over allocated by 2%. The water fund was allocated over by 1%, and then the sewer fund was under allocated by 3%. And so they were very small percentages, which, as talking about dollar value, even though, like, if you talk about a 30% allocation versus a 15% allocation, you really need to look at the dollar amount as well to see how that is impacting the financial statements. I didn't see large dollar amounts that was grossly variant in these allocations. So that's important to know. These were small dollar amounts. So when I say 1%, 2%, or 3%, that's on the true dollar amount of what we tested. So we looked at net payroll, and the variance of what we recommend versus what the actual is. That dollar value variance was about 1%, which is a small amount. So I guess the end result was just our recommendation is to, we gave some samples of what we would recommend for these individual employees and how to allocate their time. But there's a variety of ways that we can do it. That's the most common one. Those are the ones that we presented to you. But we can always sit down and talk. I can sit down with Vicki, you can sit down with the city manager, and we could go over those and come up with a good base. The point is just to be consistent, to have support for those allocations, and to reevaluate them every other year to make sure that you adjust for the fluctuation.
Okay, any questions from the council?
Yeah, I have a few. First of all, when I looked at this, I have been, in addition to the audit committee, at the same time I asked for the same type of information. And I look at it as a city, a water company, and a sewer company, and trying to keep the money separate, knowing that some people work on all three projects. And I don't think that we should include non-reoccurring projects. Like if there's a big water project, that shouldn't offset the allocations. And I saw dollar amounts used here rather than looking at the labor and how the labor was for those. And I've talked to Vicki tonight, and I realize that our accounting system doesn't allow for the employee to say, I spent so much time on water and so much time on sewer, which is something we should work on. One of the problems which was mentioned, that this report was done on August 1st, and I got it Friday night at 5 o'clock, and I haven't finished it, so I'm going to ask to have it continued so that I can have an opportunity to go through it. Since I'm one of the people that was interested, I don't know if the audit committee's already been through it, but I haven't been through it totally yet. Again, it comes down like I don't know what like the water easement project is. I don't know what the Beverly Manor project is. I don't know what the Los Cerritos Wetlands Authority project is. I don't know if you took the full cost of those projects, where they are, and calculated. It was mentioned, so I don't know if it was utilized or not in your calculation, because there's not enough detail there to tell me. So do you know what those projects are?
I don't know exactly what they are.
I can answer those questions. The Beverly Manor project is the reservoir that's over by the fire station where we had the wind event earlier in the year and the part of the roof was blown off. So the Director of Community Development takes a look and oversees the plans, and looks at all the plans for the replacement project. The water easement is connected to the Los Cerritos wetlands. The Director of Community Development also sits on a technical advisory committee for the Los Cerritos wetlands, and there's a project right now to replace the water line, the Hellman water line that's on that project. And so they discuss that on a recurring agenda during those meetings, and that's why those were specifically mentioned. But the water easement and the LCWA are the same project.
Okay. Now, how were those incorporated into this calculation?
A lot of that was inquiry, so when we talked about those individuals, you'll see I identified that a lot of this was through inquiry, and then we actually wanted to observe some supporting documentation from those. So when they talked to us, we just identified those main projects that they were talking about, and then we located them in the capital improvement projects, or a lot of them have a project system which identifies, where they were going or what they were doing, and we looked at those documentations to support those projects.
Okay. As an example, the Beverly Manor project, we should take a calculation of some of our costs and roll that into the insurance request so that it's paid for by our insurance company. And I don't know if we're going to plan to do that or maybe do that. Anyway, there were a number of things where, again, I looked at the dollar amounts, like the billing and the people taking in the bills. The bill, 4/7 of the bill is related to water and sewer. 3/7 is related to, it's related to the refuse service, street sweeping, and tree trimming. So you wouldn't take that whole bill and say that whole thing would go against the water and service. And I couldn't see if that was done or how that was calculated. I saw it was talked about taking receipts in. And so the bottom line is I need more time to look at this. So ultimately, my recommendation is that we bring it back in 2 weeks after I've had a chance to look at it. I mean, getting it Friday night and having a weekend ahead of me wasn't enough time to go through this. Because, I had the budget book and I'm going back and forth. So I don't know if the rest of the council's been through it and they're all happy with what they've seen, but I didn't have enough time.
So do you have any other comments?
Well, I do have some comments already, because I was short on time. I'd be kind of making superfluous statements without supporting where I was thinking, so.
Okay, anybody else?
Hi. Just to my own understanding, can you give us a little background on LSL? I mean, have you guys done these audits before for other cities, and how does that work?
Yes. Well, LSL's been around since 1929, so we've been around for a really long time doing independent audits. We do a lot of financial audits. I would say out of our government group, 80% of our audit work are cities, our local governments all throughout California. The agreed upon procedures is extremely common. I do it for many cities. We recommend these. You can use these for a wide variety of things. You can use the agreed upon procedures just like this. We've done cost allocation plans, and we looked at special projects to see how, cities are not only allocating payroll, but just the number of people within the city, like the number of employees. You can use us for a wide variety of things. Agreed upon procedures is common for all audit firms.
Okay. I keep calling it audit, but it is a report. It is not an audit.
It's not an audit. It's their procedures that we presented and that were agreed to, and then we tested them.
And in your conclusion, you kind of say that this is solely for the use of the city. It's not really a conclusion. It's more of a disclaimer.
It's not going to give you an action, and you're not going to do anything from this report. It's just information that you could use to make future decisions.
Because, I'd like to see, the overall distortion of the costs with the sewer and the water and how that's, affecting, the overall. Do we have that number? Is that something I don't.
Yes, actually, Councilmember Garapapa, yeah. So from the outcome that the auditors presented, the general fund was being over-allocated about $1,850. The water fund was being overallocated about $1,300, and the sewer fund was being underallocated by about $2,900. And so the total difference is about $2,900 per pay period. So the differential that we're talking about right now is about $75,000 a year. So the water fund was overallocated by about two-thirds, general fund two-thirds, water fund one-third, and then sewer underallocated.
So how will this affect our sewer and water rates?
It won't affect the sewer and water rates. Number one, the sewer water rates didn't change this year. Number two, we currently have an RFP out for water and sewer rate study. And so when we get those proposals back, a team we put together will sit down and select the firm to go ahead and do the water sewer rate update. And then the information that Lance Hall presented in this report, along with a lot of other information, will be incorporated into that water and sewer rate study.
Now, one of the recommendations was that the personal action forms would be updated. Do you know if that's...
That has been done. Yeah, that was done immediately to when the final version of the report was presented to the executive staff. Those changes that we could make, like the personal action forms, were made immediately.
And another comment I noticed was the water and sewer funds totaling $378,500 a year.
Yes.
And they were saying they were outdated. Can anyone elaborate a little bit on that as far as what's being done to update that, or how that number was chosen and so on?
From a historical perspective, the allocations, the overhead allocations that are being used have actually been in place for a number of years, and by a number of years, I mean back into the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a decision that was made back a long time ago to have this allocation of about $378,000 for the water fund, about $54,000 or so for the sewer fund. Those numbers have not changed since they were originally implemented back in that time period. The cost allocation plan was actually done in 2011, as Debbie mentioned, but no adjustments to that allocation were made at that time. So this is a legacy number that's being used, and we definitely need to look at that. And one of the recommendations that they talk about is updating the cost allocation plan. It's a lengthy process and an expensive process, so that's something that we'll discuss perhaps in this budget cycle, but it definitely needs to be done. In the meantime, because we don't have any other way to support a different number, we continue to use those overhead numbers and then use the position allocation to pick up some additional costs that clearly need to be moved to the water or sewer fund.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Could I ask another question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Councilman Sloan, any questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. No? Okay, Gary, go ahead.
I just want to double check now. Again, I thought I saw project costs used for work, and it doesn't really reflect, because the project was extensive compared to what we're doing for the general fund, it doesn't reflect really what the amount of time the person's putting in on the project.
Well, it depends. Depending on who you're looking at and who's in charge of it. So if you're looking at the project manager who's in charge of the project, then they might have more time spent based on those costs.
Most of our projects are contracted out, so at best we're in a monitoring mode. Am I correct? I think Sean would agree with most of our projects are bid out.
Are you referencing capital improvement project?
Yeah, because this went across the capital improvement project.
They're managed by our staff.
Managed, yes, but they're not done by the staff. That's what I was saying.
Well, we hire a variety of vendors or consultants or contractors for a variety of services, but our staff is directly responsible and does perform those tasks.
Exactly. But the project costs, that's all I was trying to get at. Like the Beverly Manor project, that's being contracted out, and we're in a monitoring mode.
Well, I would say our role has a variety of things, but it's more than just monitoring. We are managing the project, managing the design, making decisions, directly involved.
But again, I don't think project cost necessarily is a good reflection of hours worked or cost of employees. So, okay, that's all.
Okay, so what I'd like to just go back to now is what began this whole thing, is should these employees be being paid from water and sewer funds? And I think that is the bottom line question that we've asked, and I think your bottom line answer is yes, and they must be. Am I correct, or am I putting words in your mouth?
No, yes, you can cost allocate across those funds, the water and the sewer and the general fund.
Okay.
It is perfectly normal, and that is what most cities do. All the cities that I know, that is what they do.
Okay. All right. So with that, then, what we have is we have a receive and file. Gary, I understand your desire to look into this further. A receive and file is not normally continued, and it does not have an action. So therefore, what I would suggest is that before we take an action on this, which will be when it gets to closer to budget time, when we'll do something with this will give you a lot more time to look at it, and at that time it'll come back to us and we'll be folding it into other processes. So for tonight, if I can get a motion to just receive and file, then we can go back and see it later. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please vote.
You need a vote for receive and file, Mr. Attorney?
On most occasions, no, but tonight, since there is a motion on the floor, I'd go ahead and entertain a vote.
Okay, so that's 4-1. Thank you. For clarification, for me in the future, normally you don't take a vote on a receive and file?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much for your help tonight. I appreciate it. All right, so moving on, we're going to go to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion for approval of the items which are left on the consent calendar?
Motion, I approve, move that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Mayor, if I could, just for one quick clarification on the agenda face sheet for the council's benefit, consent calendar item J does indicate introducing the first reading of ordinance number 1644. This is actually the second reading for adoption.
All right, thank you. So to clarify that, this is the second reading on, which number was it?
Item J.
Item J, the prevailing wage requirements. Okay, please vote. Okay, that's 5-0 to approve the consent calendar. Now we will go to the items that have been pulled. We will begin.
Madam Mayor, before we move on, if I may just read the title of that ordinance from item J. The ordinance is entitled Ordinance Number 1644, an ordinance of the City of Seal Beach, adding Chapter 9.75 to Title 9 of the Seal Beach Municipal Code regarding the payment of prevailing wages.
Okay, thank you. Item F was pulled by Councilwoman Masa-Lavitt. You're on.
I'm on. Mayor, if I could?
Yes.
First, just introduce the item and indicate, as you know, that annually the council members have the opportunity to make changes regarding the representatives to either reappoint or make new appointments to the current boards, commissions, and committees. So this item tonight is for the council to confirm the list. As I indicated on the approval of the agenda tonight, there is attachment A that's revised on your dais, and Councilman Miller had asked what those changes were, so I'll just quickly review those for you. On page 1 of attachment A, City Tree Advisory Board, for District 3, representative to that would be Ronald Blau. Again, on page 1, Planning Commission, the meeting should reflect the first and third Monday at 7 p.m. On page 3 of the attachment, the Ad Hoc General Plan, Local Coastal Plan Citizens Advisory Committee, the EQCB representative should be indicated as vacant. And then on page 4, under the Coyote Committee, District 5 representative Dottie Dickerson.
Okay. Thank you. Sandra?
I've asked the people that I've appointed to these committees and commissions to attend this evening, and I'd like to introduce them to everyone. Paul Pratt has been appointed to the Planning Commission, and it is a 4-year term, and you can't get out of it now. To the Recreation Committee, Commission rather, Christine Bittner. I've known Christine for quite some time, since she moved to Leisure World, and she's been a very helpful member of the community and currently serves on the board for Mutual 5 and does an excellent job. And I know that she is excited about being on the Recreation Committee. I've been forwarding her some of the emails I've been getting, and I get very encouraging comments back. And to the Seal Beach Cable Commission Foundation, I've appointed Joseph Valentini. I hope I got that right. No. Valentinetti. That's it. I will. Joseph comes to us with just a dearth of knowledge and experience in the cable field, and I know that he is going to be an excellent member of this of the foundation. Thank you very much to the three of you for agreeing to serve your community. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we're going to move on to item I, and we had two people.
Madam Chair, this would require a motion and a second.
Oh, sorry. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the Seal Beach boards, commissions, and committees?
Second.
Please vote. Oh. I think that's 5-0 to approve. Okay, congratulations and thank you all. Okay, now moving on to I, the City of Seal Beach, participation in the Housing and Community Development Block Grant. We had two people who pulled that. Councilman Sloan, would you like to begin or to defer?
I'll go ahead and begin. All I wanted to say is this is probably one of the best programs that the city has going. The people out in Leisure World really have used this program. It's become more safe. Many of them have actually changed their way of life, being able to use these fixtures that we've added into the units. I will say that it's really good when we can use government funds, that we can watch this close and look at it right in front of our eyes, see the results. And I think it's a fantastic program, and if it requires a motion, I'd like to move that we accept the report.
All right, could you tell the folks that don't know what it is we're actually putting in there?
I'd be happy to. We're going into the bathrooms, and we're taking out a tub. People have a very difficult time stepping over this tub, and the contractor has gone in and make that level, almost level. And also, we've actually upgraded all of the fixtures in the bathrooms, the toilets, and places for people to sit rather than stand in the shower. And it's just been a fantastic program.
Thank you. Okay, and Councilwoman?
I would just like to echo what Councilmember Sloan has said. It's been a wonderful project for Leisure World, and fixing up those bathrooms has meant a lot to people, and you know how important it is in your life, and it's even more important when you can't step in the tub to take a shower. So I want you all to know that as one of the reps from Leisure World, that it's been a wonderful program for everyone there. And it is income restricted, so it's not just given out to everyone, it's given out if you qualify by income. So all people in Leisure World cannot get it. And I will second his motion.
Okay, please.
Madam Mayor, I'd just like some clarification on the motion. The motion, as I heard it, was to receive the report. There's actually a resolution for this item, so if I might recommend the motion be amended to state to approve the resolution as presented.
Okay, David, you wanted to adopt resolution number 6529?
Absolutely.
And I second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please vote. That's 5-0 to adopt resolution 6529. And now we move on to item K, street sweeping schedule, and Councilman Miller.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on the Old Town sweeping. Maybe Sean can help me. I see pink. What is pink? I don't see it on the legend, but I see pink. I think I see pink.
So pink are a grouping of streets that are swept every Monday, and it's predominantly on the western. It's within Old Town, predominantly on the western side of Central Avenue, on the southern side of the streets.
Okay, that's the top one, isn't it? I see that now every Monday. How about the 2 times a week? What is that? And
there is that is listed in the legend, but there are currently no streets that fall within.
Do we anticipate any streets that will be 2 times
No.
a week? Okay. And the daily on Main Street is 5 days a week?
It is Monday through Friday, correct?
Okay. I just wanted clarification on the chart. Thank you. I move that item.
Second. Let's vote. 5-0 to accept the street sweeping plan. All right, public hearings, no items tonight. The unfinished and continued business, there are none. New business is the adoption of the memorial bench and expand the forest program policy, and to adopt resolution number 6531. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Tonight, our Deputy Director of Public Works, Luis Estevez from Maintenance and Utilities, will be presenting this item to you tonight. Luis?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The item before you this evening is the memorial bench, a proposed memorial bench and expand the forest policy. Approximately 10 years ago, this program was initially started, and during those last 10 years, approximately 80 memorial benches have been placed throughout the community. When the program was originally envisioned, it focused mostly around the Electric Avenue Greenbelt and on public streets. However, the past couple of years, we have received some requests from the members of the public to put memorial benches in parks. So to that end, staff went through and evaluated the entire park system and pre-identified the most suitable locations for new benches to be placed. Consideration was given to accessibility to the benches. We also wanted to make sure that the benches did not impact open areas within the parks that affected more active recreation uses of those parks. We wanted to also make sure that there was enough spacing in between the benches and other existing park amenities. So we identified those locations and created a series of GIS maps that identified or pinpoint the exact locations of where those benches would go. In conjunction with that program, staff developed a new program called the Expand the Forest program, which is identical to the Memorial Bench program, only the community now has the option of having a memorial tree planted as opposed to a memorial bench. And like the bench location, staff went through the park system and out on the Greenbelt and identified suitable locations for new trees to be planted. We also considered, we also have pre-identified the specific species of trees to be planted so that they complement existing trees in the parks. Also identified locations where trees can be planted that won't impact sidewalks, tree roots damaging sidewalks and such, and also making sure that we don't plant trees in open space areas that are used for more active recreation uses. So the policy before you this evening is really just a formalization of the existing program that's been in place now for the past 10 years. And should council approve the policy this evening, the maps that staff has created would then be provided to bench sponsors or tree sponsors so they can review the maps, identify their preferred locations, and then have a tree or bench placed in that particular location. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I had a couple of questions.
Okay, Councilman Verapapa?
I didn't see Eisenhower Park on this plan, is that?
That's correct. We decided at this point that there's already a lot of benches out there and a sufficient number of trees. There's really not enough room to accommodate new trees and benches there.
Because I think, I mean, I don't want to see it now, but I think it would have been a benefit to see where the existing benches are now, even if they are in some of these other parks, like Heather Park. I don't know if there's any in there now, or maybe there are, but or maybe there's some in Corsair and you're adding 3 more. You're proposing to add 3 or 4 more. But I was kind of curious about that. Also, on some of these that are really close to people's houses, do you get there input, or how's that work? Like, if I want to put one in front of your house, is that okay?
We're talking about benches or trees?
The benches, because in Corsair more specifically than the other places, because there's the residential homes right there. And, I mean, how does that work? If I want to put one right in the middle of Corsair, can I do that without input from other residents, or how do you go about that?
You know, typically, as we've placed benches outside of this program in parks or replaced benches, we haven't obtained, or talked to adjacent neighbors about whether or not they want to see a bench so close to their homes. Now, these locations, these maps are an approximation. There's not an exact pinpoint location, but we would take a look at making sure that there's not, if someone's looking outside of a picture window or something like that, they're not looking at a bench or blocking their view with a new tree. So we'd have to kind of adjust that placement.
Well, I think some of the ones that are close to people's homes, they might want their own bench there eventually, is what I'm thinking. It's kind of like, if you beat me to the punch, you get to put a bench in front of my house, but you know what I mean? I don't know. So maybe some dialogue would always be beneficial. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Miller?
Yeah, I have a comments on a couple of the pictures I'd like to go over with you if I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to my Park and Recreation Commissioner before I concluded my thoughts. My comments are all on parks in College Park East. As an example, Heather Park. What we've experienced, to digress a second, at Bluebell Park, when they redesigned it, they put the benches out right by the play equipment, which is nice because the mothers can sit close, but nobody sits on those benches because it's in the sun. On Heather Park, your location of the benches, it would be better that those benches would be located under trees or adjacent to trees so they can get the shade, not out in the sun.
So one of the factors that we had to look at, though, was accessibility. So we try to look for places where benches can be placed that are close to sidewalks that are easy to get to. If you place a bench in a turf area doesn't have an adjacent sidewalk or adjacent paved surface or some other kind of surface to get to, it makes it difficult to be able to use the bench.
Well, the two you have adjacent to play equipment aren't near any accessibility. You have sand on one side and grass on the other side, so it's not a good location. The other one by the tennis court's probably a good idea because people tend to wait to see if they can get on the courts, so that's not such a bad idea. That can be in the sun. Mm-hmm. My other questions are on... Again, on Astor Park, it's, again, they show the one out in the sun. There's no reason not to have it back in the shade somewhere. You show one kind of in the tree, just so there's shade, because no one wants to sit in the sun. That's been my experience, having participated in many events at our parks. Almond Park, I have a question. Near the play equipment, we've taken out, or we're going to take out, I think we've taken them out maybe by now, the olive trees. Are they just going to be replaced by the city? They don't need to be here?
Those are Almond Park, correct?
Yes.
Yes. What we've discussed internally is that existing trees are either die or have to be removed from one, or maybe fall over in a windstorm. Rather than replacing it right away, we could then create a new spot or location for a memorial tree. And so over time, these maps will change where we could add additional spaces. At the trees at Almond Park, we can add to this map and create additional Explain the Forest tree.
Well, there were two trees there that were taken out that used to provide shade again for the benches that are there, so it may be a good idea to add some trees back into those locations. There's just like 2 trees removed, I believe.
There was a total of 5 that were diseased.
I haven't been up there. Okay.
Now, did you like to see those added back now outside of this program, or have those spots made available as part of the program?
That's up to you, the city. Okay. But I would like to see trees back in there one way or the other.
Okay.
In that location. And the last one is for Arbor Park. I talked to some of the people that attended to Arbor Park. They definitely like the idea of where you put the trees on the perimeter. But again, those benches, they like shade. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Just one more question. Is there a big demand for these benches now, or how's that been going lately?
There actually is. There's about a dozen people waiting at this point. So we've kind of put a hold on benches until this policy was reviewed and considered by the City Council. We have not discussed the Expand the Forest program yet with the public. Pending council's approval, we would then start through the quarterly newsletter, start advertising the program to the community, and let everyone know that this is a new program that's available that they can start for.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. One is that I know that we have two people that have been waiting to put memorial trees in, and I would appreciate it if they could be contacted to get those trees in. But also, I'd had a lot of people calling and saying, I've heard you're going to put more trees on the Greenbelt. We've got enough trees. We don't need any more trees. And I've told them, because that's what I thought I was told, is that we are only replacing trees as they die. But looking at this particular thing that I'm looking at here, it looks like actually we've got a lot of trees planned for the Greenbelt, particularly at 13th Street, but that looks really open to me there.
Yeah, there's two segments of the Greenbelt where we thought that we could add additional trees. 13th and Electric, and is at 10th and Electric as well. There's additional open space that we could add more trees and make at least make the Greenbelt available for some kind of memorial. Right now, in terms of, we don't identify any new locations for memorial benches in the Greenbelt because there's so many out there already.
Right.
So we felt that, okay, we can at least maybe create a few open spaces for trees in lieu of the benches.
All right. Well, I think these two spots look good as I'm looking at the aerial photos on them, because they do look fairly vacant there. So, but just to keep in mind that the people along the Greenbelt, they love the forest. They just don't want, they want to be able to see the trees for the forest.
Understood.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
I do. Are you going to be having an arborist take a look at your final selection for location of these trees?
An arborist put this together. So he considered the locations and the species of trees to be used.
Okay. Is there a more specific question?
Well, I was concerned about a tree species here that makes pretty much of a mess, and it looks like it's close to the sidewalk or the street, Almond Park. They're using Brazilian pepper, and it makes a mess. These little red berries fall all year. I don't want to nitpick. It's not my job. I think the overall plan is a good one. I'd like to see memorial trees and benches. I think that's a great idea. Whoever came up with that is brilliant. But, it's just the minutia that I was looking at. I'm sorry.
Well, sometimes there are alternate trees also, aren't there, Luis? I mean, I don't see it on the plan there, but usually when we do, we have, what was it in the tree master plan? Didn't we put 3 different trees in? That if one didn't work, then
within the street tree master plan, we set themes for the streets, and we had primary and alternate species. The species that are within this plan was chosen for a variety of reasons to match what's in the parks and to provide a little consistency and be the appropriate tree for the planting. So we can revisit the Brazilian pepper tree.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Or
Mayor, if I could,
yes.
Luis, based on, you said you have a current waiting list, would you say there's more of a demand for trees or benches?
Right now, it's just for benches. We haven't advertised the Expand the Forest program to the community yet. We'll do that very shortly.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Just one more question. If after some of our constituents see these plans and we want to make a change, does it have to come back before the council to move these benches around?
That would be at council discretion if you guys want to see that again. But as it's set up now, the council approves the locations, and this is the locations we'll work off of.
All right, how do you handle a disgruntled citizen then if they don't? For instance, let's go back to Councilman Verapapa's question, and Corsair Park, and somebody has a bench that's put in front of them for Uncle Tom that used to live over on 10th Street, but then this person dies and their children want to put that bench out there. How are you going to handle if you get a disgruntled?
It is at this point first come, first serve. We will continue to advertise the programs to the community as often as possible. So at least people know or aware of the program, and so at least starts to get them thinking about if this is a spot that they may want to use in the future. But like I said, if it's first come, first served, someone places a bench there and someone else wants to put the bench there, in all likelihood, they'll have to wait until the useful service life of that bench is over.
Okay, so let's say as a council member, we go to put a bench in front of a house, and I don't want to pick on you, Mike, but on Coursera, because that was brought up, and the homeowner there says, I don't want a bench there, and then they go to the council member, and so then Councilman Sloan's question is, do we have to bring this all back to council in order to resolve that problem?
No, we would solve at the staff level. We would find a compromise and figure out a solution that would win-win for
So we're
everybody
flexible,
involved.
is what you're saying?
We're flexible.
Okay.
We are flexible, yeah.
That answer?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Just one more question. Is it just regulated to parks? Because there's other areas that probably could use a tree or two or more, but, I mean, is that your intent, I guess, is people want to go to parks?
In the parks, typically, yes. Because they want to maybe sit underneath the tree and kind of reflect and look at the tree. It's hard to do that if it's in a median or in a parkway in a busy street.
If I might add one detail, the city does have an existing memorial bench program that has not been placed in parks. It's been in mainly city right-of-way, the pier, the Greenbelt. We have some on Main Street. And so that program will continue to go forward.
How about Pacific Coast Highway?
If it's in a street right-of-way, absolutely. If there are locations on PCH, we could look into that. Of course, we'd have to work with Caltrans on that as well.
All right, thank you.
That's where a Caltrans person would want one, right? Do we have a motion? Your turn.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Please vote. Okay, that's 5-0. Thanks a lot, Louis. All right, with that, I think we're done. I need to get back to my agenda page here. Okay, with that, I am going to adjourn the City Council to Tuesday, January 20th at 10 a.m. to meet for Council Goals Workshop at Old Ranch Country Club, 3901 Lamson Avenue, Seal Beach, California, to meet in closed session if deemed necessary. Thank you for coming, and good night.
Blackbird fly to the dark and lonely, to the dark and lonely. Why don't you take no notice? Why don't you